All right, so some really interesting comments out there that I've seen more and more of recently. Things like the cost of AI are already out of control and the tangible return not being shown yet. Productivity and ROI not improving, apparently, which suggests that these models are not performing as well as the benchmarks suggest they should. So I don't know if you've seen this, but I keep seeing it. And we see on the news like token costs are out of control and that it's not delivering. But as somebody who is in the trenches every day building stuff with AI, I think the ROI is there, right? Like my experience with this is not what a lot of comments on the web make it seem to be. But I think it comes down to how we're using it and what the overall metrics are, and then even who it's for, right? Because I think the bigger the company, the harder it is for them to truly adopt and adapt to AI in meaningful ways. That may sound kind of weird, but it also shows us a gap in the market, perhaps, and opportunities for small companies. 1, 2, 3-person teams. I'm talking small. And companies even a bit bigger to develop their own internal AI teams to push things forward. Because what I've learned is the more people you have cooking in the kitchen, the more complicated things get real quick. Okay, that's why successful restaurants, big restaurants, have a system. They have to train employees. Like it is a process. It's different than just cooking up something in your kitchen. And yeah, the thing you cook up might end up being the next big thing, but complexity scales. And for really big companies, I can see this being a problem. So we're going to read this article today, but before we do that, let me just go back down to the comments, because that one of these ladies that was commenting, I believe it was Fawn here. I've worked in AI for years, most recently at Meta, huge company. So that kind of gives us an insight into maybe her perspective, right? And she's talking about generative AI not being worth it. The machine learning models that handle the algorithms like recommendations are huge revenue drivers. So now this is putting it into perspective. And then as Andy guys, like for software engineers, it's clear and obvious that it's worth tens of thousands of dollars a year easily. And I agree with Andy. It's probably worth more than that, depending on what you're doing with it, right? And I'm using AI to build things, right? To build things that drive revenue, cut costs. We can make a whole other video about how we actually practically use it. But I'm going to read this article to you, right? So hopefully you enjoy the voice, because we're in for a bit of a read here. If you feel like things are accelerating in AI, you're probably right. Better AI models from the leading American AI labs have been releasing more quickly than ever, even though government interventions stopped access temporarily to two of the most powerful models, Claude Fable and GPT 5.6. I didn't actually know government regulation stopped 5.6, so that's news to me right there. Which brings up kind of an interesting fear and concern that I've heard people echo, that I've had myself, which is like, well, if they can take this stuff away at any point, literally just someone was just talking about this today. He was showing me this sweet thing he built where he orchestrates all of his agents together and a bunch of mumbo jumbo that if you're not working in it, you don't understand. Watch my other videos. We'll get you to that point of understanding pretty dang quick, because it's actually very simple. Okay, it is a simple process to learn about this stuff. But he said, what if they take away Fable? Because I'm using Fable to build all of this, right? I'm using this engine. All right, we have videos that we've done before that talk about, what is an AI? Well, there's a few different components to it. There's the vehicle, okay? The vehicle could be Claude, could be Codex, could be ChatGPT, okay? It could be Claude Code, it could be Hermes, could be all sorts of things. These are like the apps that you use, the actual like piece of software on your phone or that you're accessing. Like for me, this is Claude Code. I just type in Claude, and now I have access to the most powerful tool set that I've ever touched in my life, and I can just start doing things, start having it do things for me. You can change the world in this little box right here, truly. So these are the vehicles, and people get rightfully so, understandably so, they get this stuff confused all the time. Like, they'll interchange these words, and it does them a disservice. It does you a disservice when people do that because it just muddies the waters. Okay, but then we have the engines, right? Because vehicles, they need an engine. What else do they need? They also need gas. Okay, so we'll get to that. But the engines would be things like Opus or Fable. We were just talking about Fable, right? Those are two engines made by Anthropic, the company behind Claude. There's also like GPT 5.6, which, again, kind of confusing with the way they name these things, but ChatGPT is the vehicle. You can guess who made GPT 5.6. It's OpenAI, the company behind both of these sort of products, if you will. One of them is a vehicle, one of them is an engine, the same company behind Codex. There's thousands of engines, guys. They're all better at different things. They're tuned differently. Honestly, we don't have to worry about all the details right now. That can be for another day, and generally you don't need to understand everything about it anyways. So what's our gas? Okay, gas/fuel. Our fuel are the tokens, okay? So the tokens is really an arbitrary. Some people may disagree with me on this, and good, disagree with me and argue with me down in the comments because I'll probably learn something. But tokens are kind of a black box. So a company will charge you based on the amount of usage you use their models. So there's two ways we pay for this. Let me explain that first. There's retail pricing, which is expensive, y'all. Expensive, okay? Retail and then subscriptions. Okay, there's more details to both of these things, but this is more or less the breakdown. I typically operate entirely off of subscriptions. There are cases when I don't, but I try to live in this world because you get way more bang for your buck. If you spend $1 on a gallon of gas through a subscription, that same retail price might cost you $10. And that doesn't quite mean it's 10 times more expensive all the time. I'm just throwing out examples here. It's actually more than 10 times expensive. This is a conservative number for some of the models, some of the engines out there, the way they consume gas. So the same company that sells you the engine is going to give you a subscription or a retail price. So for example, Anthropic, I have Claude, which means I have Claude Code, Claude Cowork, and Claude Design. These are all different vehicles that are fine-tuned for their specific engines. And then I pay them a subscription of $200 a month. And I have multiple of these accounts set up. I have 2 right now. And I get X amount of tokens. I do not track them. I mean, I have to check on them daily to make sure I'm within my limits and I don't go over, so I don't get charged more money. I turn that feature off, actually, so there's no surprises. But it's something I keep track of, but there's no real way I know if they were just to kind of go behind the scenes and change this formula where now, the subscription's worth $1 a gallon, but now it's actually $2 a gallon, so I'm getting less usage out of it. I don't have any control over that. Nobody does. That's one of the unfortunate parts. Anyways, that's enough of an explanation about how these pieces interlink together. We'll have another video sometime that goes more of a deep dive. It is important, but you understand enough about that right now. So on to paragraph 2. So again, these things are coming out at increasingly fast rates. They're very powerful. It isn't just release timing. The evidence points to an accelerated capability gains, although there's some things AI is just still remain weak, and that's true. This is especially obvious when we look at the ability of AIs to do real work. What is real work? Okay, let's figure this out. There are a few good assessments that try to measure how much human work AIs can do. 2 of the most famous, from Meter and the UK's official government AI Security Institute, estimate the amount of human programmers' hours worth of effort the AI can do with a single prompt. So this guy compares human experts in many fields to AI performance using professional judges. And they are all increasing at a better than exponential rate. Better than exponential. So things are skyrocketing right now. And I got to say, as somebody that uses AI every day, pretty much all day, that is true. Things are getting pretty crazy. And for me, it's a good spot to be. My capabilities are doing this, right? As long as I'm willing to continue to learn. It does require you as the operator to continually, almost every day, every hour, learn something new, or at least relearn the way you did it an hour ago. And it's a bit of a juggling act because you can't realistically relearn from ground zero every single minute, every single hour. But you do need to learn how to do better than you did last month. And do better just means how has the capabilities of this model outpaced the way I was working with it before? Okay. If that's a topic that interests you, tell me to make a video on that. Anything you hear me say, if you want me to go deeper on, I can talk about it all day long, and we can compare notes if you're an operator as well. And the most important thing to do to continue to learn is to be humble and go talk to other people that are using it in creative ways. Example, I sat down with a guy earlier today. He showed me this great thing he was building. 2 months ago, he didn't know what an AI agent was. He came to me and said, Tal, what is an AI agent? And I told him. And now he's like blowing my mind. I'm like, whoa, dude, I didn't even really think about that. He's working with it in a completely different way than I am. Okay, so a lot of people assume, just based off of their previous experiences, that AI learnings are linear. So you'll go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. And it's not this way, really at all. It branches very rapidly. And you'll come out with it goes every which direction, right? It doesn't even just go up or down. It's going left, right. It's got a fourth dimension in there. So it's got 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z. So it looks, it does this thing, right? Where it's X, Y, Z. But then there's a 4th dimension of time. And you can be anywhere in this whole situation at any point in time. So where you don't want to be is stagnant though, right? That's the biggest thing. You do not want to stay where you're at. You need to constantly be evolving, in my opinion. So yeah, let's just bash that misconception right now. It'll do wonders for you. Okay, so let's skip over this paragraph. So the 3 major American companies, Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google, although it's been a while since Google released a new model, in my opinion, the only 2 major players are Anthropic and OpenAI right now. I know Google's doing stuff. And again, this is a 4D paradigm. So me saying that is incorrect and wrong in so many ways. But for where I'm at, the point in time I'm at, and the point in space I'm at, they're not relevant to me today. But 5 minutes from now, if I continue to learn, they might become very relevant. Okay? So there's a second set of near frontier AI models that typically lag 6 to 12 months behind the frontier, all of which are from China. That is true. These are open weight models, which means anyone can use or modify them after release, as opposed to the frontier models, which are proprietary. It makes them cheap to operate, and they're getting really good really quick. And, I'm not the person to tell you if they're safe to use. I think they're safe to use based on my understanding of how these models function. I think you could potentially run into some security issues, but also at the same time, I think there's ways to make sure they're safe to use. But I don't know what that is. I haven't spent any time heading that direction in this, in where I'm at. So someone more knowledgeable about training these models and the actual training that goes into the weights and all these things may say, no, they're not safe to use. Or I say, yeah, it's not a problem at all. That's another term you're going to hear thrown around we have to train the AI to do this, train the AI to do that. So that's also a term that has just kind of lost its meaning, because what it originally meant, and it still means, is not the way most laymen use it, including me. So when you say train an AI to do something, that used to mean you're actually training it. You're building the model. You're building the engine. And now it means just teaching an engine, giving it documentation on what to do, basically. So those terms, you can see how this landscape, this whole frontier is kind of getting muddy. And I could talk an hour just about how muddy it is and how a lot of these terms, some of them just mean the same thing under the hood. So the Chinese models are getting a lot better, and they're doing crazy things, y'all. They're creating I'll show you a quick website from a content creator that I follow. He had Fable create 105 sites in 25 minutes. I thought it was 25 sites in 25 minutes, but it might, I guess it's 105 sites. So he just made this in like half an hour, or rather he prompted Fable to do it for him, and they're incredible, right? They're becoming really, really good. I mean, like, are they usable for any brands? Probably not, but like, it demonstrates design capabilities and technology capabilities that would take, any one of these would take an experienced programmer hours to do. Hours. And if you're not experienced, raise your hand, me. Weeks, months, even. So AI, the way we use AI is changing. It does longer and longer tasks. The way people are using AI is changing. Until recently, the dominant way to use it was co-intelligence, like as an assistant, as a peer. And that is kind of changing. It's kind of weird to observe. But it's more like, hey, you just tell it what you want, and then it goes and does it. So that's no longer co-intelligence. That's you asking this magic 8-ball, in a way, and then it gives you an answer. And that can freak some people out. And I would think there's right and wrong ways, or let's just say effective and non-effective ways to use this, that you just have to learn through trying it. Right? I do not recommend you just start asking it how to run your life. But if you have problems you're trying to solve, sometimes it can solve those for you if you ask it to in the right way. And it's becoming increasingly easier to ask it to. So here it just talks about how like internal adoption of AI is rising quite quickly. That it's doing really, really well. Claude does more per prompt for more expert users. So Claude produces more actions for more expert users. Yeah. You know, if you've seasoned your computer in such a way, like a cast iron skillet, and you know how to talk to it, it's pretty darn useful. So what it's saying here, what this article is saying, is that if you have domain experience over something like law or something like building websites or anything, domain experience in how to structure a company or do a particular task, you're going to be more successful than somebody that doesn't know anything about that using the same tool. That makes sense. Shouldn't be surprising. Now, what you don't need to know really much about anymore, if hardly anything, is programming and coding, because Claude is like the expert at that domain. So we're at this moment in time. Being on an exponential means each change over a fixed window is larger than the one before it. If your organization wrote an AI plan anytime before the winter of 2025, it described a system that could do a couple of hours of work with fairly high error rate. A few months later, you can get 16 hours or more. And this is why AI feels like it is making leaps, even though it is a curve on a graph. We keep experiencing a steady doubling of capacity as a series of shocks. We are very bad at feeling exponentials from the inside, and we are currently inside one. It is quite incredible to see what's happening. And it's going to go on to say about how like your internal like AI posture is probably not up to par. So the author says, I think this also explains the turbulence around AI better than the usual stories about hype. AI is not capable of being a real cybersecurity threat until it suddenly is, causing sudden and improvised policy changes at the highest level of government, like we just saw. Markets discount whether AI might threaten to undermine a business model until suddenly it can, leading to massive swings in stocks. These lurches get read as signs of an immature field that will eventually settle, but the author doesn't think that's going to settle anytime soon. Where did he talk about committees? Let's see. Here we go. Oh, it was right below this. The instability is what happens when institutions that move at the speed of people, or worse, committees, try to track a capability curve that is very much not human in nature. And as long as we are on some sort of exponential, and for as long as it lasts, the gap only widens. So large companies have committees. They have to take time to decide things. They have to decide how they're going to use these tools. By the time they've even had that first meeting, it's changed. The way they need to use them has changed. And I don't know what they're going to do about that, because they have to like measure a bunch of things. There's risk involved in how they adopt these tools. But the small guys don't have that level of risk, right? They can take down the Goliath rather swiftly and efficiently, the incumbents in a space, if you're building a piece of software, for example. Or let's say you're in the blue-collar world, right? The competitors, like, guys, I have this waste management company, right, that we just hired, like, for my house, and they suck. So I fired them, and I got a local guy who doesn't have a website and like nothing, but he's going to get the job done. This local guy, if he so chose, he could build a company, being a small company, if he were to adopt AI in like such a way where he could topple over the community incumbent, right, which is like a major nationwide company. He could gobble up the market share because he's got better service. He doesn't have better systems. He doesn't have the infrastructure. AI can give him all of those things. He can build it himself. He can find somebody in his community who's learning and task them with that, hire somebody. There's so many different ways to skin that cat. But the author of this work is talking about the twilight of chatbots. Chatbots are kind of gone, right? You can still go to Claude.com and talk to it, but you're not really getting the most out of it. You're not tapping into the massive amount of power that you've been given. You are a domain expert in something, and Claude is going to allow you to accomplish incredible things in that domain if you learn how to use it. So watch the other videos we have out here. Ask questions down below. Talk to us. We'd love to help you bridge that gap. I've said this multiple times. I'll say it again. The only thing that's stopping you from doing this is simply the awareness that you can. It is not complex. It is simple. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's hard. But I bet you've done a lot of hard things in your life. This is going to be no different. It's simple.